Anneliese was the only daughter of Geoffrey and Matilda Friedrich. She belonged to a well-known and quite wealthy family. She grew up in Louisiana with her mother and father, who brought her up with lots of love and compassion. Her father had passed away when she was about 12, but Anneliese still received a lot of attention, love, and care from the people of her community, as the Friedrich family was very well respected in that area. Growing up, Anneliese was a little fed up with all the traditions and practices, the do's and don'ts that went on in the Friedrich household. Her mother wanted to raise her in such a way that no one would be able to take advantage of her little girl, just as people tried to take advantage of her after her husband passed away. Matilda had a hard time keeping the family business running. The people she thought were her trustworthy partners ended up betraying her to claim her wealth and property. Of course, Geoffrey Friedrich was well aware of his partner's secret agenda, and Matilda was witness to how he dealt with his business affairs. However, Matilda never approved of deceiving people until she realized how selfish others could be. Matilda went through a struggle at first, but later she had to compromise her values just as Geoffrey had done to maintain her power and success. The only person who kept her trust was Geoffrey's butler, Milton, who Geoffrey had practically raised since a very young age. For this reason, Matilda was quite strict with her daughter all the time. Anneliese was eager for the time she would finally turn 18. She wanted to leave the house and see the world for herself. When the time came, she convinced her mother to let her go to California to study. After much convincing, Anneliese's mother agreed to her only daughter's wishes and allowed her to go. Anneliese was having the time of her life after getting enrolled into BII University. She finally made many friends that her parents had always put a restriction on. Matilda was still sending her daughter a lot of money, so she could still live a lavish life while she studied there in California. Anneliese had rented a nice loft where she stayed by herself. Matilda didn't want her daughter to take up the worry of having to work for her living. Anneliese was spending all she wanted. She was going wherever she wanted and doing whatever she wanted. It wasn't before long that Anneliese met a young man at the university named Charles Becker. Charles Becker was in his last year at college. He was a decent gentleman, he was kind and polite and respected others. Anneliese grew very fond of the man, and Charles too was attracted to Anneliese. The two started dating, and within no time, Anneliese and Charles were in love. After Charles graduated, he wasted no time in proposing to Anneliese, who cheerfully accepted his proposal. Charles soon moved into Anneliese's loft, where the two started their married life together. Anneliese wanted Charles to meet her mother and inform her about the marriage back in Louisiana during the college break that year. She explained to Charles how possessive and strict her mother was of her. Charles was reluctant to go. "Anneliese, you know I really don't belong to a big family. I'm not that wealthy either. I don't know how your mother will receive me. My mother won't let me down, I'm sure of it." Charles didn't know how he would fit into the Friedrich mansion, with their etiquettes and manners. It wasn't that Charles was an outcast. Charles grew up with very loving parents who raised their son well. They worked hard to give him a good life and sent him to college to earn his degree and start his career. Charles didn't want to risk a chance of disapproval from Anneliese's family. Anneliese and Charles were now on their way to Louisiana. Anneliese's mother had sent her tickets to a flight, and by the sound of her voice over the phone, Charles was sure she didn't like the fact that Anneliese was bringing someone over. "My mother is nothing but a businesswoman. If you want to impress her, you have to talk business with her. You see, when my father was alive, she hated getting involved, but over the years, I've seen her use that room my father used quite a lot." "What room?" "That house is full of secrets. Even I don't know. There's a secret room on the second floor. My father used to have the keys, and now it's with my mother. The left wing on the second floor was kept for work purposes, and we used to live on the first floor and the other half of the second. They never told anyone what was behind that top secret door, and I was far from going near it. Who knows what they have in there? I always imagined it was a safe or something. I'll only know once my mother passes the key on to me. Interesting. After a long flight, Annalise and Charles reached the Friedrich residence where Matilda was eagerly waiting for her daughter. But when Matilda saw Charles, she wasn't too happy. "Mother, this is Charles, my husband." "Husband? Annalise, you got married without letting me know? Can we talk about this later, Mother?" "Hello, I'm Charles Becker. I'm Matilda Friedrich." That night at the dining table, the three conversed on how things were. Annalise spoke about how she first met Charles and the day they got married. The look on Matilda's face changed when she listened to Annalise speak. Charles tried to change the topic and spoke of other things like his ambitions and goals in life. He tried his best to give a good first impression. But Matilda wasn't too pleased with what her daughter had done. When it was time for everyone to head off to bed, Annalise showed Charles around the house. The house was indeed huge. If I had only known you belonged to such a wealthy family, I would have never proposed to you. "What are you saying, Charles? My mother has gotten to your head, hasn't she?" "Not just your mother. Everyone is thinking the same thing. I'm taking advantage of you." "Does it matter what others think? All that matters is that we love each other." Annalise finally came upon the locked door. She put her ear to the door and tried to listen. There was nothing but silence. "This is the secret room. Have you ever tried opening it?" "My parents have always heavily guarded it. It's probably the safe or some important paperwork. I mean, what else could it be? The only time I've seen my mother bring the keys out was when one of her business partners would come over." "Milton, get everything prepared for the room." "Welcome, Mr. Powell. I've heard you've changed your mind on the deal." Over the next few days, Charles came to know more about the Friedrich and their family business. The business had been in the family for decades, and Annalise would soon inherit it. Whilst Charles was learning more about the Friedrichs' business affairs, Matilda and Annalise were in the privacy of their bedroom having a heated conversation. "Annalise, have you gone mad? Why have you brought this stranger into our family?" "Stranger? Mother, he's my husband." "Have I not taught you anything about the outside world? It's wicked and cruel. I've spoken to him, and I've learned quite a lot about his background. He couldn't have afforded this even if he worked for the rest of his life. He's with you for no other reason than money. Money is everything." "That's not true. You're being judgmental, Mother." Annalise tried to convince her mother to accept her relationship, but Matilda was persistently stubborn. After about 2 weeks, it was time for Charles to return home for work. Annalise had planned to return to California with him, but on the request of her mother, she stayed back at the Friedrich residence for a week more. As soon as Charles drove out of the driveway, Matilda turned to Annalise. "You're not returning to California. If your husband can afford the loft I had been paying for, let him pay for it." "Mother, this isn't fair. You're only doing this out of your hatred and selfishness." "I'm only keeping you safe. You're too young to see through the schemes of others." Charles Becker was nothing but a selfish, greedy individual. Over the next few months, Annalise tried her best to convince her mother, but it was all of no use. Her mother had seized all her electronics, and Annalise could find no way of contacting Charles. "Why don't you just divorce this girl? You're wasting your life, Charles." "No. Her mother's not going to live forever. At least after that, I'll get what I want." Charles could predict what had happened after he left, and he tried calling the Friedrich residence, but was always given an excuse when it came to speaking with Annalise. Charles had attempted to go to the Friedrichs' house, but the security guards wouldn't let him pass the front gate. Charles even went to the police, but they wouldn't assist him against Matilda Friedrich. At last, Charles gave up to sending letters, but Matilda always made sure those letters never reached Anneliese. She was quite impressed at how innocently Charles would express his love for Anneliese in his letters. But she wasn't someone to be fooled. She remembered after her husband had passed away, there were many people that tried to woo her only to get their hands on the wealth that Geoffrey had left behind. Matilda had always kept an eye on everything and made sure to secure all her business affairs within the locked room she kept guarded even in her sleep. Anneliese couldn't bear the emotional trauma she was going through. She had to do something that would break her mother's stubbornness. Anneliese took some pills and went to bed, only intending to scare her mother. Unfortunately, Anneliese passed away due to an unexpected reaction to the drug. Matilda was heartbroken. After seeing her daughter for the last time at her funeral, Matilda came back home and took out all the letters that Charles had sent. Numerous thoughts ran through her mind. Matilda called Charles to the Friedrich residence, where she planned to hand down Anneliese's inheritance to him. "Milton, get everything prepared for the room." Matilda no longer wanted to live in the house where her husband and daughter were no longer with her. She told Charles to take care of the business and maintain the property. After a week, Matilda Friedrich had vacated the house. Once Charles got the news, he hurried to the property. He opened the door and smiled. He chuckled as he heard his voice echo in the huge living room. He took out his phone and called his friend. "Bro, guess the good news. Finally got what I wanted. I knew Anneliese would be a catch, but the fact that I would get all of this so easily? Didn't expect that. No worries for the rest of my life. We need to party." Her mother handed it over on her own. "Hold on, there's one thing I forgot to check. I'll call you back." He laughed as he went up the stairs. He had only one wish at the moment, to open the locked door. He fiddled with his keys and tried each one until he finally hit the right combination. He opened the door and was shocked to see nothing but darkness. Suddenly, he heard a noise. He turned to see it was Matilda. Matilda suddenly pushed him into the room, and the devastating truth dawned on Charles. It wasn't a room. It was a deep, dark pit that led all the way underground the Friedrich estate. Charles woke up in a small, dark room. He realized he was with some other men. They were all dressed in suits. "What just happened? What is this place? How do I get out of here? And who are you people?" One of the men spoke out and pointed. "You don't know what this place is? Look over there." Charles saw something that shook his core. His own crushed, lifeless body laying on the floor. Matilda waited to hear the thud of Charles's lifeless body. "This is what you get for trying to take advantage of my daughter. I never let men like you get away. Now enjoy your stay with the rest of the rivals of the Friedrich family, Mr. Charles Becker." Matilda handed the keys to Milton. "Did you prepare everything, Milton? Make sure you put a second layer of dirt on this one." Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.